Again, thank you to everyone who was able to join us today for our very first HERkys Hour, celebrating National Girls and Women in Sports. And thank you again for joining us. I'm Jane Oswald. I'm the Director of Events with Iowa Athletics Development. Before I turn things over, I just have a couple of housekeeping items. Just a reminder that for today's event, your camera and your sound are turned off, but you can still jump in with questions at any time via the question and answer icon or the chat feature that you can find in your Zoom menu bar. So feel free to send me any questions that you might have for these wonderful ladies throughout, and we'll try and get to as many of them as we can. And then also we are recording today's HERkys Hour conversation, and we will be sure to get that posted on our website, herkys.hawkeyesports.com, later in the month. And we'll get more details to everybody on when we're going to post those and how you can find them. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy Director of Athletics and Senior Women's Administrator at the University of Iowa, Barbara Burke.
Well, thanks so much, Jane. And as Jane said, I want to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to the very first HERkys Hour celebrating National Girls and Women in Sports. Throughout the month of February, we will continue to host a HERkys Hour every Wednesday. It's free. All you have to do is register. And a shout out to all of our listeners that are here today and that have joined us. I certainly hope you have a great time. As Jane said, we'll be recording these hours as well, so that you can come back, you can share with others that are unable to make the call today. And I'm going to talk a lot about herkys.hawkeyesports.com, because I want that to get into your head, that you can go and visit that site and get all the information that you might want to learn about HERkys. I want to tell you a little bit about HERkys before we get into a question and answer session with our guest today. Our HERkys community was formed in 2017 with the commitment to celebrate the rich history and tradition of women's athletics here at the University of Iowa, while at the same time providing opportunities for our female athletes, empowering our next generation of leaders. In addition, I want to highlight today that February is Black History Month. You will find on the HERkys website, herkys.hawkeyesports.com, I promised I would tell you about that, a very special video series released every Monday in February. That series will highlight some of our great letter winners, coaches, and alums who have made a big impact, not only in sport, but in life. In addition, we have a HERkys podcast. You can find that on the HERkys website as well, where we highlight former female letter winners throughout the month of February. So now let's get started. I'm so excited to welcome our guest here today. These are wonderful women, 4 outstanding leaders in the Big Ten. All 5 of us together have more than 130 years of experience in this business. When I say that, I feel really, really old, and I see the ladies smiling, so they might be saying the same thing. But I am so humbled and honored that they have joined us here today to share their experiences and some of their insights into work. So let me try to introduce them very quickly. Jana Blay, currently the Interim Director of Athletics at Northwestern University. Jana, you want to say hi to everybody?
If I can find my unmute button, it took me a second there. Yes, hello, welcome everyone. Thank you. I am so thrilled to be here with this group of women, and it's going to be a great hour.
And Julie Manning, Deputy Director of Athletics at the University of Minnesota. Julie?
Barbara, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this special occasion and kicking it off. It's going to be a fun hour, and delighted to be serving with my fellow SWA women across the Big Ten.
Awesome, thank you. Janine Oman, Deputy Athletics Director at the Ohio State University.
Oh, thank you, Barbara, and I'm so excited to join. These are some favorite ladies of mine that I get to spend a lot of time with, so I enjoy that. The one thing I'm somewhat jealous in HERkys, you can make a really nice women in sports. I can't do that with Brutus. I'm over here trying to figure out how to come up with a catchy name, and I can't come up with one, so excited to be here.
Awesome, thank you so much. And finally, Maddie White, Deputy Athletics Director at the University of Indiana. Maddie?
Hello, everyone. I too am excited to be here. Barbara, thank you so much for coordinating this and inviting me. And as everyone said, phenomenal, phenomenal women. I'm here to talk, but I'm also here to learn. So very, very excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks to all of you. So we all come from a variety of backgrounds, experiences. What I'd like to start out by doing is have each of you share just a little bit about your experiences, but also about what this work has meant to you throughout your career. And Janine, you get to go first, because with over 30 years of experiences in intercollegiate athletics, you actually started your career in the sport performance athletic training. So tell us a little bit about how you got started, and then why you moved out of athletic training into full-time administration.
Perfect. Yes, have a little bit of unique as far as how long I spent really in that space. So actually, if I go back, I was the young girl in high school playing sports and loved it. Came from a medical family. Actually didn't know what athletic trainers did at that time. It was a small community in Ohio. And so I wanted to be in the healthcare, didn't want to be a nurse. So I became a PT. And so I actually worked for 2 years in a physical therapy space and worked really in a hospital. I've done nursing home, I've done home health, really rewarding work. But then I transitioned, really went to grad school and got my athletic training at the University of North Carolina, and also worked as a PT. So for 20 years of my career, I really worked in intercollegiate athletics in that space, from a sports medicine space. When Gene Smith came, he was looking at really what are different ways and how we can look at things. So he offered me an opportunity to build a team in the sport performance space, which was really for me very intriguing. I think that, as you look in life and your career, you can continue to go down a path of being a specialist. And in medicine, from a specialist, you can only take care of so many ACLs and either want to continue to learn and grow and do that or expand your experiences. So for me, it was allowing me to expand my experiences and to build a team of people still in the healthcare space. And then it just kind of gradually morphed from there into others. And I always say this to people from a healthcare background, the same things and the same skills that I use every day to solve issues that come up, I had to use as a PT, as an AT, right? Instead of a physical problem to fix, but you're using the same skill set to do it. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thanks, Janine. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to Jana now. And Jana, we all say congratulations to you. Recently, you were named the interim director of intercollegiate athletics at Northwestern. And so congratulations there. I know it's a big challenge, but man, what a wonderful opportunity. And share with us a little bit about yourself and what prepared you to step into this role as interim athletics director.
So thanks, Barbara. I'm officially day 3 on that job. The interesting thing about an interim position is that it typically means that you're doing 2 jobs at once. It's not that someone has taken my initial job as deputy AD for administration and policy and SWA and given it to someone else or hired more individuals. So it's really been a collective effort from my colleagues as well to really be supportive of this new role and helping me kind of take a few things that I can pass on to them and make sure that I match up some of those things to their strengths, and then give them an opportunity to really flourish during this time as well. But the challenge right at the moment is trying to kind of work through that and figure out how to do both jobs really well. And there's a trick to it, I think, and I'm going to figure it out here in the first week to make sure that, I am completely focused on helping this department transition appropriately and smoothly, which is my first and only priority. I was listening to Janine talk about athletic training, and she and I have this in common. Like, I started out in athletic training as well, but not for nearly as long as Janine did. Like, I figured out right away this was not what I wanted to do, and that administration was definitely the better place for me to be. But interestingly, having been in athletic training, and then also I coached for 2 seasons. I had a lot of experiences early on in different areas within athletics. So I was able to hone in on what I thought was really made sense for me and where I was going to be able to be most successful. And looking back now, I think, of course, administration was the right place for me to be. And I could go on and on with stories about how I grew up and my parents and their positions and their jobs and whatnot. But it was clear that that was really the better place for me to be. It just took a little bit of time for me to figure that out. As far as what's prepared me for this opportunity to be in interim AD, for me, it's really been about taking the opportunities, creating opportunities, but also taking the opportunities when they're given to you, and make sure that you are doing your homework and knowing your audience and, understanding that you are always on. So You know, I love to have a good time just like everyone else. And I'm absolutely sure Maddie will talk about having a great time as well. I love her laugh. She keeps me laughing all the time, but you have a good time doing your job, but you also have to make sure that you are developing the relationships, like the professional relationships, and have that, you know, some of the executive presence that you need to have to be able to show people that you absolutely can take that next step. And that's a challenge for me right now. I know I've got some colleagues on this call listening in, and I know I'm being recorded, but I'll be honest with you, like that's my challenge right now in taking this interim, in being the interim AD, to be able to show people what they've known of me and what I have been doing, that I am able to take that next step, and that they can look at me as, you know, as our leader of this department and not in the position that I was in previously. So there's a lot happening here at Northwestern besides the COVID and all of the issues around the pandemic, but this transition. And I'm really honestly humbled and honored to be asked to take this on. And I've got some big shoes to fill. And I know that I have wonderful colleagues to help me manage this as we move through the next couple of months. And by the way, it's going to be months. It's going to be a few months. When our university hires a vice president position, they take their time. And so I'll be figuring this out and using all of my resources and abilities to make myself better, no matter what the outcome is on the other side.
Thank you for that, Jana. You know, we are all pulling for you, and it's day 3 and you're still smiling. So you're winning the battle. So just keep it up. So we're thinking of you. And for our listeners, understand that we have a group of senior women administrators across the league. There are 14 members strong of us. And for the past months that someone shared, it's been over 200 and some Zoom calls that we've had. We have Zoom calls every Monday, Wednesday, Friday afternoon from about 2 to 4:30-ish. And so we've got to know each other very, very well. And so it's been wonderful interacting with these women. So now, Maddie, let's go to you. Maddie's the fun one of the group, everybody that's listening. And that's what I mean when we get to know people. Don't shake your head, Maddie, we know. And at Indiana, you get to wear a lot of leadership hats. And I think I'm right, Maddie, that you did not actually start your professional career in intercollegiate athletics, but you transitioned from campus into athletics. So tell us what led you to do that.
Yep. I'm glad to know I'm the fun one. Hey, I started off in student affairs, so I will everything that I do, and I like to acknowledge that college changed my life. So I'm emotional. So the emotions range from being funny to also I can get pretty emotional. I'll try not to cry today, but literally going to college changed my life, and I know what it did for me, and I know what it did for my family. So ironically, my grandmother always wanted me to be an educator, but in her mind, it was like working in a high school or elementary school, and I wanted to do something different. And so I found myself ultimately getting into student affairs, and was blessed to work at McAllister College, a phenomenal institution, Julie, in your backyard in St. Paul. And when I was there, I knew and I got to see the impact that we can have in creating these experiences for students. But I knew I wanted a smaller, defined population. And so athletics just made a lot of sense. And I love that we get to see our students from recruits in high school all the way through to when they graduate. And so I've been blessed to be at an institution and work for leaders who have empowered me to be a part of creating that experience for our students. So again, as I said, I know college changed my life, and I wanted to be involved and commit myself to being in a space where I can provide that to other students. So I am truly blessed that I get to do this, and the people who I get to work with, they're just tremendous individuals, and they give our students everything that they got. And you get to see the benefit of all these things working together to shape these experiences for our students and preparing them for life after college. So that's how I got to athletics, just wanting a population that I'm like, I can find them, I can see them, and I get to see how we can start this to finish it, and have been tremendously grateful for the experience that I've had at IU.
Great. Thanks so much, Maddie. We're going to move on to Julie now. But before I do that, show of hands, how many of you played sports? I know the answer, but I want our listeners, how many of you played sports in college? So I think we have 2 softball players, Jana and Janine, and a golfer in Julie. Am I right? Okay, so I had that right. But Maddie did not play in college, but that's okay. And I want to make that point that you don't have to be a college athlete to work in intercollegiate athletics. So don't let that be a deterrent for you that this might be a career path. Maddie,
Yeah.
did that
Well,
ever?
I was gonna say, had I been a college athlete, I probably wouldn't have been able to do it because my skills would have been like, no, they're not, you can't play and we won't let you work either. So it's probably good I did it this way.
Barbara, I did not play in college because I was in PT school. So I was in class from 8 to 5. So I had no, yeah, but I did play a lot of sports in high school and that. So, yeah.
Awesome. Great to know. So Julie, your turn now. And as a veteran of more than 25 years in the business, you've actually moved around a lot. Our careers are somewhat parallel. We actually crossed at the same institution. I was at University of Wyoming. I left there. You went to University of Wyoming and you left there. So help us understand a little bit about your career path and what that has meant going to different institutions and helping you to create your leadership style.
Yes, thank you, Barbara. I appreciate it. We did. There are a lot of similarities as you'll listen and or hear as we're kind of unwinding our story. So I played golf at Iowa State University and had the great fortune.
I'm out. We won't hold that. So
I thought I could say it in this space. I don't get to say it up here in Minnesota because we know how Minnesotans think of Iowans and vice versa. But I was at Iowa State for a long time. I was actually the golf coach there for almost 20 years. And where I intersect a little bit with Janine is that for 7 years, Jean Smith was our athletic director and Elaine Heber was our senior women's administrator. They afforded me the opportunity to kind of double dip, if you will. I was coaching full time, of course, but I had the opportunity to sit in occasionally on senior management teams. And I knew very quickly when I did that, that this would be something that I would like to do after I completed my coaching career. I loved every minute of coaching. I was so fortunate to be at my alma mater and to have that small population that Maddie talks about. I mean, you had 10, 11, 12 women that you're working with on a daily basis is incredible opportunity. I did want to move on. And so I took an opportunity in administration at the University of Colorado in Boulder. I went out there thinking I'd be there 3, 4, 5 years. I stayed 9. And of course, as you're working through on a day-to-day basis, you start to find other areas of interest and other opportunities. And so I began to climb, I guess, if you will, with other opportunities that I was afforded. You kind of get to a point where there's other people sitting in chairs that you want to be sitting in. And so you have to make those decisions. Do I want to stay there and continue to be in that role? Or do I want to move around? And that's a very difficult thing to do because you fashion yourself to coaches and your colleagues and your administrators that you work with. But I did decide to leave Colorado and advance at the University of Wyoming in the same position that you had held there previously, Barbara, into more of a senior associate. First time opportunity to really be at the decision-making table there with a wonderful athletic director in Tom Berman. Eventually, I had an opportunity when University of Minnesota position opened up to come back to the Midwest, to come back closer to home. I'm originally from a very small town outside of Des Moines and worked for Mark Coyle, who I had known from the Mountain West time. And so 4.5 years ago, I ended up in Minnesota. Again, those are difficult decisions to leave. We do that in our industry, and it is a way to advance. It's also a way to, as Maddie said, I mean, you get very emotional about your departures, but I feel very fortunate to have been in the positions I have been in, and I feel like it has prepared me well to be at the table, the decision-making table, but to bring things with me, to bring value, to bring experience, and to bring knowledge, not to just sit at the table.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. And I admire all the work that all of you do and the years of experiences that you bring on behalf of our coaches, our staff, and our student athletes. So again, thank you for joining us today. I want to move into our question and answer session. And we're going to start, and I'm not going to direct these questions to any one individual. If you feel led to provide a response, please do. Now, ladies, if you don't, then I'm going to have to call on you. So I know how you guys talk on the other SWA calls, so I'm not really worried about a response right now. But let's just have some fun with some of our answers. And to our listeners, please don't forget you could put a question through the chat, and then I'll be asking Jane in just a minute to ask one of those questions. So let's start with, I love the aha moment question. can any of you share, or would any of you be comfortable sharing? Did you have that one aha moment that you knew this is exactly what, number one, you want to do, number one, what you should do, and number two, this is what you just love to do? Somebody unmute. So, and we've been doing this since March. So if you don't know how to unmute now, so I see Julie unmuted.
Sure, I'll kick it off. So my aha moment, I mentioned to you that I had an opportunity to double dip with Jean and Elaine in that opportunity. And one thing that they allowed me to do not long after I had kind of joined those monthly meetings, senior management meetings that they had, is that I was allowed to be the tournament manager, the tournament director of NCAA Women's Basketball Regional. We happened to have a really good team that year, and so it was quite an undertaking for me. But that's when I knew, when I was managing a local organizing committee of, I think it was 36 people that were a part of it. We started 18 months in advance. I felt a big responsibility and had tremendous support from our leadership, our president, and our athletic administration. And I knew that's when I wanted to do that. I still continued to coach for several years. I wanted to make sure I was done with that before I got into full-blown administration. But for me, that was when that aha moment struck.
Awesome. Does anybody else have a, Jana?
I mean, I'll share. I don't know exactly. It was more of a don't leave the profession moment than it was an aha moment for me. And it was early in my career at the University of Hartford, and I started off in compliance. And it was really trying to decide whether this was the right move for me. And I can't come up with all the reasons why I was sort of in this funk about whether this was really the right decision or the right choice for me to make. But somewhere along the line, you'd have to know the relationship I had with my high school softball coach. He was an absolutely amazing man. And he actually coached at the University of Connecticut, where I went to school and played softball for a bit as well, and was our pitching coach there. And he was just an absolutely amazing person, but like a second father to me. And for some reason, out of the blue, he called me one day, and I was particularly not feeling great about what I was doing in my work. And he called me one day out of the blue, which, and I hadn't talked to him in probably 3 months. And it was like someone somewhere along the line, something told him to call me. And he just wanted to ask me how I was doing. And it was really emotional, impactful for me, because what he said, he's like, I don't know why I felt like I need to pick up the phone and call you today, but I feel like you need to hear from me. And then he said, are you having concerns about your life at all? Which was just so weird and surreal. And then he said to me, listen to me. This profession needs you. They need people just like you. Do not give up. If you are in a place where you don't feel great, I can tell you you're in the right place. And so I started thinking about, meaning, what is the next step for me? And perhaps it was still in intercollegiate athletics, but maybe I was not exactly the right part of intercollegiate athletics that was really lighting me up. And I started to think about what it was that really lights me up. And that really is about the underlying understanding that I have of intercollegiate athletics. Like, why do I do this job? And it is because I love the aspect of developing people. There's a lot of stuff that comes at us every day, and it gets really hard to find that sort of foundation. You got to dig for it sometimes to get back to it. But it's really why I love what I do, is because it's developing people and sending individuals out into this world better prepared and ready to be impactful. And that's what I found as my student athlete experience. So it was more of a don't get out moment than it was an aha moment, but it led to a bigger aha moment for me.
Yeah, and what a great lesson for all of us and to our listeners as well, that we need strong, powerful women in this business. So don't give up. Maddie, you unmuted?
Well, I was about to say, if I can bring it full circle, when I was in college, and I won't use my tagline that I use around here, but I'll stay more professional. I wanted to be a broadcast journalist because I wanted to have a talk show. So I thought that that's where my skill sets would be best utilized for the world on TV. And so I shared with my grandma saying, you need to be an educator. I actually interned at ESPN. I thought I was on my way. And I just remember when I got back to school and thinking about the things that really brought me joy. And it was those things affiliated with working with students. So, being an RA, doing those other things. So I will say my aha moment honestly happens like every day, because Barbara, as you alluded to, there are tough times. We are in tough times now. And I literally still want to come back for more. So it's like, you're in the right place, sis, to just keep on doing what you're doing. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. Hey, Jane, I think I see some questions coming through the chat. Would you like to share one of those?
Yeah, I have a couple. One is for Maddie specifically. Our guest is asking, what position was your first one when you transitioned from student affairs to athletics?
I was an academic advisor, Champs Life Skills Coordinator. So I was working with football, softball, men's tennis, and rowing, and then was the coordinator of our Champs Life Skills program, which we all now know, we call them a lot of things now, but the student development programming.
Great. And then I have another one for anyone in the group. Have you faced any obstacles throughout your journey in athletics, any barriers or obstacles, and how did you overcome them?
I can hop on this one. I've got a really funny story. So this goes way back into my AT days. This is, think, late 80s, early 90s. So, so back in the day, athletic departments weren't integrated, so you had men's athletic departments and women's athletics departments. And so I was at the University of North Carolina, and as an athletic trainer, I actually took care of men's teams and women's teams. So I'm not going to name the institution that we traveled to, but we traveled to an institution for a track meet. So I had this male track athlete that I needed to provide treatment for. So I go with him to the men's athletic training room, and this cutest little guy, I can see him to this day, goes, "Ma'am, you're not allowed in here." So then I go, well, there's the women's one. So I went down there, and they're like, well, he can't come in. There's only certain hours of the day, and this wasn't the certain hour of the day. So I walked back. Tim was his name. He's a pole vaulter, see him clearly to this day. So we go back to the men's athletic training room. And so I started listing these things that I needed. I need to have this modality machine. I needed to have these hot packs. So I gave them this whole laundry list. And this little student's, yes, ma'am, we'll bring that right out and take care of you. And so we walked away, and my student, Tim, he goes, "Janine, we don't need all of that." I said, "It's the principle of the thing." So, those are things that you just had to figure out a way. I was a female GA with football back in the late 80s, and traveling with teams and locker rooms and managing all of those things. You just had to kind of roll with it. So, but you figured it out, and you had to have some fun with it. And so I could still remember this young student. So that's my kind of funny story.
That's awesome. And I have a feeling that all of us have a story very similar to that. So, but let's get to another question, you guys, because this one's really important to me. When we talked about at the beginning, collectively over 130 years of experience. Wow. I know, standing here before all of you, that it has really changed. Intercollegiate athletics has really changed on behalf of young women. And there's a lot of changes out ahead of us with NIL and pay for play, and the financial situation due to COVID and the pandemic, all those things we're dealing with. Set all of those aside. And from your perspective, what has changed in women's athletics since you got in the business? And what is some advice that you can give to other young women that might desire to be in this field, knowing what we know is out ahead of us? And I'll open that up to the group.
I'm like, who unmuted? Is it me? Clearly, I've seen more opportunities, more women in visible and significant roles than when I first started. And for me, seeing the women, particularly in our department, take advantage of those opportunities and excelling, I'm at the place now where, I've been at IU long enough that I am fortunate to work with women who are our student athletes, who are now, on our website as administrators and coaches. And I know some of them are on here, but I'll shout out like Lainey, Lorian, Becky, Danny, Kate, Amanda, Sydney, Emily, Alex, the list goes on and on. So one, seeing women be able to have these opportunities. And then I guess the advice I would give them is knowing that they're worth it. And I think of all those women that I named, that they knew that this is what they wanted to do, however they came about it, and they are so worth it. They're so great and so talented. And then, just them believing in themselves. And as Jana had said, like, we need them, we need their leadership, we need their insight, we need their experiences, we need their voices. So yeah, when I come to work and I see some of them, I'm like, I remember when you was in study hall, and now they're over here telling me what to do. So, it's been great to see people grow and our profession expand so that these women can have these opportunities.
Awesome. Thanks, Maddie. Julie, I saw you unmute.
Sure, sure. And I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Maddie was saying. From my view, I mean, just seeing women in the commissioner role, which is a very influential. There's only 32 commissioners in our country, athletic director chairs. They are in the professional ranks, both as coaches and management personnel, which is very, very exciting. And then our officials. I mean, we're seeing women who are officiating NFL, NBA games. They're at the professional ranks, and certainly on our fields as well, officiating. So it's all very exciting. When I was coming up, I guess if you will, growing up in this industry, I always aspired to be the senior women's administrator, because that's what we saw. We saw women sitting in that chair and assisting the athletic director in the day-to-day business and what have you. So that's what I aspired to be. And you obtain that. I love when I go to conventions now, or as Maddie is saying, talk with young professionals and you ask them what they want to do. And they just say, I want to be an athletic director. I want to be a commissioner. I want to do this. It's never anything that I thought of, saw, or aspired to be. And I'm so excited that the ceiling is gone for sure. I mean, women can aspire to be whatever they would like to do. So my advice is, don't aspire to be me or us necessarily, Jana, I hope. Aspire to be the commissioners and the athletic directors, the really big time decision makers. So it's an exciting time. It's a very, very exciting time for women in particular in our industry.
Thank you. Janine, I saw you unmuted.
I think I want to, one of the things that I've noticed in being 30 years plus really in this environment, we used to go where women coached women because the men didn't want to coach the women, right? So now we're in a place where we have a lot of men that are coaching women, and actually the reverse is we're looking for these women to coach our women's teams. Right. So I think that's a change that I work really hard. And I can tell you in running 2 searches, it was one that really encouraging our women that this is a career path for you that you want to take for that. So the men don't have a problem in raising their hand to say, I would be good at that. And so just running the searches are different in how you attract and how you recruit in that is very different, so getting the experiences is really unique and trying to find that. So I think that's an interesting change, right, that you've had for that. And I think one of the things that's a positive for me in that is that's the value of what women's sports is bringing, that they feel like there's a market for that and we want to get in on that market. So I think that people can look at that in a negative way, but I think it validates the great work and the great athletes that we have on the women's side, that it's very valued. So I think I put a little bit of a different spin and then really encourage those that are in sport to consider that as a path, because, I think it's up to all of us that are on this call to really make it work for that female who wants to be a mom and who wants to do the things that are there. And so I think that's what excites me when I'm hiring moms or I'm hiring people is how can we best support them?
That's a great insight, Janine. Thank you. Jana?
Yeah, double-edged sword, right, Janine, and really hard because it does show the value of women's athletics, but on the other side, you have to work so much harder to provide an environment where women can be successful and they don't opt out before they ever opt in. And so, I'll share a personal story because I didn't know that I was being impactful when I did this. I was just living my life. And I realized that I was being incredibly impactful to all of the women in our department because they told me so over and over again. And it was a few years ago, my son, who's 14 now, what he was probably 10 at the time, I guess it might be 4 years ago now. And he was really having some struggles that were, significant enough that he needed me far more full-time than, and perhaps I needed to be a mom full-time in that scenario and make sure that I was there for the very most important job of my life, which is being a mom. And so it turned into a scenario where I needed to take a leave of absence. I never thought I would get to that point. I never thought I would ever even consider it. And it turned into, you know what, the best thing for my son and my family and me at this moment is to be fully 100% focused as a mom. And it wasn't going to be possible for me to do so. I got the balance and all of that, I get it. But this was a significant scenario that I really needed to do this. And I went to my AD and he said, I completely support you 100%, absolutely. Now, I was doing that out of necessity. And things are good now, so don't worry. But I did that out of necessity. And what I did not understand, and what I was told several times over by women who had come up to me in the department before I left for the medical leave of absence, was like, thank you. Because what we say all the time here in our department is that family comes first, and that you have 100 other hats that you're wearing, and people don't really know what's going on in your lives when you step into the office. And you've just shown us that that is actually true. You're playing it out. You're finding a way to be able to do it. And when you have to step back, you realize that you can. And so I didn't intend, I wasn't doing it for any other reason than because it was really important to me in my personal life. And I realized that it actually made quite an impact. And so, listen, you need to do your homework when you're looking for opportunities. You need to know what kind of athletics department you're walking into. You need to understand who your athletics director is and what they really stand for. I have been blessed to work for ADs who have just been tremendous, have families of their own, which they understand the balance of that, but been tremendous in supporting women and understand that there's some pressures that we feel that men simply don't feel. And if we are going to women supporting women, if we are really going to do that, we have to find the way to make intercollegiate athletics accessible and doable before people opt out. And then we don't get the benefit of their experiences and their thought process.
Thank you so much, Jana. Those are great comments. And I know we've all felt that way in our careers as well. So we appreciate all that you guys continue to do at your own institutions. Jane, I think we have another question coming through the chat. We're getting close to our end time, so we want to get a couple more questions in.
Yeah, I do have a couple. This one is for Janine. What was the transition like moving from a support role as an athletic trainer into an admin role in the eyes of the coaches?
I had great relationships with coaches, so they actually probably had great appreciation for me because I knew what their world was like. I know what tensions are from a coach perspective. I know what tensions are from the student athlete. I spent 20 years of my life as a mediator. So I think it was an overwhelming, they really welcomed me because I was somebody who knew their world very well. While I had not been a coach, I mediated a lot of that. So I honestly found it to be a pretty easy transition, and they were very welcoming in that.
Thank you.
And then I have another question for the group, and Julie kind of mentioned this in her opening comments, having a seat at the table. But and again, this is for the group too, do you remember the moment when you advocated for yourself to be part of the conversation?
See lots of thinking going on. Julie, you unmuted.
Yeah, and it wasn't that long ago. And it was the first time I've ever done anything like this. And I had to kind of look back at myself to say, who's saying this? But at my current institution, we've had a couple of people move on, become ADs, which has been wonderful. And so our athletic director will typically, his preference is to promote within. And on a fairly recent one, a young man went on to become an athletic director, and I wasn't promoted. And so just maybe my next opportunity that I met with him, he said, now you said you really aren't that necessarily interested in becoming an athletic director. And I said, yes, but I didn't say that I wasn't interested in being promoted. And so I want to take on more here. I'm not done. I'm not satisfied. I feel like this is where I want to be for a period of time. So an athletic directorship may not be in my sights, but and it took him back a little bit. It was, again, the first time I've ever said anything like that. But since then, the next time came around and the opportunity presented itself, and I was promoted. I kind of hope that it was more to do with my performance than me just having said that, but maybe it was a combination of both. I'm not sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. That reminds me of, I say our responsibility to advocate for women and to advocate for ourselves to put us in leadership positions to affect change. And I think sometimes we as women, I won't talk for the group, but myself, we don't always advocate enough on our behalf. And I think that's a flaw. And I'm very much aware of that. So I'd encourage our listeners, especially our young women, to know that you're strong, you're powerful, you're good, believe in yourself and advocate for yourself. So I have another question I'm going to ask. As I said, we're coming up to about 12:50. I want to stay on time because we really appreciate the time that our listeners have given us today. This is a really strange question, and it'll go to maybe your character and the type of person that you might be. Who wants to share what is on their nightstand right now, today? Anybody? Maybe that's too personal.
No, I'm happy to share, but you're going to think that I literally picked it up off my nightstand today to bring it in because I'm having a conversation about it with my mentee through women leaders. So let me just show you. This is what's been on my nightstand. Has uncomfortable conversations with a Black man, and it is phenomenal. Do you see this man right here? He's a genius. I am telling you, Emmanuel Aucho, a genius. He's also in the sports world. So he is absolutely phenomenal with the way that I think I probably just relate to it better, right? I hear him, I can see him on sports broadcast and get his voice in my mind. He's reading me this book, basically. This book is absolutely phenomenal because it goes chapter by chapter. It asks one question per chapter. He's answering a question from white people who don't know the answer, and he answers it exactly how you will be able to understand it. And it is phenomenal. Chapter 10 specifically, get this book.
Thank you, Janet. And that actually, leads into another question that we had talked about as a group is being Black History Month here in February. Does anyone want to share any initiative that you might have going on your campus right now and what your role is in that?
Do you want to take it, Maddie? I don't want to.
Well, I love when it tells me you are muted. And then I was like, am I muted? Am I not muted?
You're unmuted.
Okay, I'm unmuted. So we have an anti-hate, anti-racism coalition in our department. So we're actually working on some of our programming. I know our Cuban Center is working on some social media things. We have 2 student athlete groups that want to do some programming. So we're doing that. But I will say we are still very high off of our MLK Day program where we had a conversation with Tony Dungy. And I mean, he really, 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 really did a tremendous job. So I know a lot of us, we just, Tony Dungy, so yes, we do have programs in the work that we'll be rolling out. But again, just wanted to highlight and even shout out that Tony, that with Coach Dungy, I act like we're Coach Dungy, we're not on that space, but he was great. And he's from conference too, Big Ten. There we go.
There you go. Awesome. Julie, did you want to add anything to that?
Sure. I just, what we're doing this year prior to the national anthem at every men's basketball game and women's basketball game is that we are playing Lift Every Voice and Sing. And those for you who don't know that's the often considered the Black national anthem. It's a hymn that came about in 1900. I have to tell you that when we play it, I watch, and it's shocking what it does to our visiting team. And Barbara, your visiting team here recently, I watched what they were doing. I noticed that a woman of color was officiating and was pretty close to me, and I could just see tears running down her cheek. I see a lot of the women, primarily going to the women's basketball games, are following along. They're singing. We're going to expand that during this month to do it prior to every home competition we have, whether that be volleyball, soccer, whatever arena. And I just have to say it is particularly moving and so fun to see the reaction from our opponents.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. We really appreciate it. I'm going to go around the horn real quick. One last question. And all I want to throw out there is what one piece of advice or what can you offer to our listeners today, and what has inspired you, or what has inspired you either way? And I see you guys writing questions down. So I'm going to give you a couple seconds, but I'm going to start with Janine on this one. So what one last thing would you like to share with our listeners today?
Awesome. I'll kick it off, and that way I don't have to find something new if these bright women would come up with the same piece of advice. So thank you for that. One of the things I tell students I work with all the time, everybody's so concerned about a title. What title do I have? So I always tell them, don't chase a title, chase skills. And so in doing that, you need to look at that person you aspire to be and what skills do they have that you don't have, because that's what's going to land you in the chair, in the seat, right? It's not that I was this title at this person, so I need to be this title at my next institution. I'm more concerned about, are you getting the skills you need? And if you have the skills you need, people will put you in places. So I'd say that's my piece of advice.
Great. Thank you. Jana, how about you?
I have three pieces, super quick, but kind of a cool story that goes with it, because it's a piece of advice from my mom, piece of advice from my dad, and then a piece of advice that I give to my boys now, and myself all the time. So the first piece is from my mom, who would tell me all the time, life is not a dress rehearsal, Jana. And that's all she'd have to say. I'd ask her a bunch of questions. Should I do this? Should I do this? Should I do this? And her response was always, life is not a dress rehearsal, Jana. And like, oh, figure that out. That means go for it. Don't sit back and wait and think that it's going to come around again. It might not. Be prepared when the opportunity comes and take it. So that's the first one. The second one is, my dad would always say, you're good, but you're not that good. And it was funny and it was a joke and people would laugh at it. We'd sit around the dinner table and he'd be like, everyone good? And we'd be like, good. And he'd be like, you're good, but not that good. And it was just a joke, but it reminded us all the time to just be humble, to understand and remember that, like, you've got to put other people first, and to be humble, and don't make yourself out to be more than what you are. So that's it. And then the third piece of advice is, you can do hard things. I tell my kids this all the time, and it's so simple. It sounds like a nursery, something you get out of a nursery book. You can do hard things, but just remind yourself of that all the time. Like, we give up too quickly. And perhaps I see that in my kids, who are both teenagers now. Like, you give up a little bit too quickly, and you need to remind yourself over and over again that you can do hard things. There's a way through it and a path, and you will find it.
Awesome. Maddie?
I was gonna say, I'm gonna beat Julie to it. I actually had a coach tell me this when I was promoted and became our SWA, because unlike Janine, I had a good experience, but it was interesting knowing that I've been at IU in athletics my whole career. And so going from position to position in the same department and trying to get people not to remember me as the academic advisor, but hey, now, I was the academic advisor working in your sport. Now I'm your sport administrator. It was an interesting change, but people were supportive and great. But I had a coach come in my office when he found out about my my promotion, and he said, you got to be comfortable with people being uncomfortable. And I was like, he is so right, and I think sometimes I feel like my role is to make sure everyone's comfortable. But, when I enter certain spaces, certain things I might say, it makes people uncomfortable. And whether that gives them an opportunity to grow, us to grow in our relationship, I really had to learn that it was okay for people to be uncomfortable, not in a bad sense, but knowing that as you grow and you change and the roles that you take on, the things that you have to do, sometimes not everybody's going to love you. You're not going to be the fan favorite, but if you're doing the right thing, it'll always work out. So be comfortable with people being uncomfortable.
Thanks, Maddie. And Julie?
5 action items that I try to do: be accurate, be competitive, be honest, be inclusive, and the most important one to me is be kind.
Awesome. Great words to live by, and really a great segue into finalizing the call today. And I can't thank all of you enough for joining us. You've heard some great thoughts from all these great women. And I would encourage any of the listeners, I'm sure they would take your calls and emails If you want to follow up with them, they're very open to any discussions that you might have. So I want to reach out to our listeners and thank you for joining us today. It's been our first ever lunch hour. And as you know, we have another one next Wednesday. And we would ask you to go ahead and go online. You see the HERkys.HawkeyeSports.com. We have Debbie Antonelli, a national basketball analyst with over 30 years of experience in sports broadcasting. She's been covering college basketball and the WNBA since it began in 1996. A reminder that this is Black History Month for the entire month of February. We'd ask you to go on our website every Monday and you can view a great special video highlighting some of our former Hawkeyes. And we certainly do appreciate all the support that you provide to our student athletes. We also have a wonderful podcast. It's called HERkys Voice. You find that on our website. It is hosted by our head women's tennis coach, Sasha Schmidt. She does an amazing job. We'd ask you to go on that every Tuesday, but then you can also find those downloaded and take a listen at those at any time that you might like. And so today in closing, I just want to provide one of my favorite quotes from Eleanor Roosevelt. It will not be a surprise to anybody. I'm sure you've all heard it. I think of it often. And a lot of you have hit on the topics of being empowered and leading and guiding. But one of my favorite quotes is, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So I say to all the women on the call, be strong, be brave, go forth, and we are Hawkeyes and we are women. So go Hawks. Thanks everybody for joining us. Look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.